Okay. So go ahead and get started. We'll start off with attendance. So we have Lacey Stewart.
Finley Whitman.
Jody Black.
Is Anacleto there? Did you freeze? I think Anacleto is frozen. What is his last name? It's Tavares?
Tavares.
Oh, okay. There you are. You're unfrozen. Okay. Tavares. Okay. All right. We got the attendance here.
Okay.
We'll start with the questions here. So the first one says, what consequences to you are the most disconcerting and why in regards to chapter 2 on redefining the marriage from truth overload? And I'll just leave it open for whoever wants to start it.
One of the most disconcerting to me was there she is.
There's
Lori.
Lori.
My
One
gosh.
of the most
Hi, Lori.
Hi, guys. So sorry.
That's okay. We literally just did attendance and we're just starting the first question.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question and then Finley was going to start her answer to it. So in regards to chapter 2 on truth overload and redefining marriage, what consequences to you are the most disconcerting and why?
So I was just going to say the fact that there could be a possibility for no structure for children. They have no stability in their home. That could be one of the most detrimental consequences, I think, because if we look at statistics where they're single parent homes or divorced homes or whatever, there are statistics that show children struggle. Could you imagine how much more they would struggle when their parents are doing it for fun, just to have a free lifestyle? And so I felt that was one of the most disconcerting ones, was like the instability with the children.
Yeah, going along with that, something that really struck me was, and that was before I actually read it, because when I was reading it, I was like, this means it's actually going to become so that abortion is more common. And then the part when it says, and weakening marriage will lead to a culture with more non-marital sex, thus more non-marital pregnancy, and sadly more abortion. That's when I was like, oh no. And I think that's one of the things that I find most disconcerting about this too, since there is no structure to a marriage and what a marriage is and what a family is, then there's going to be more people who are okay with cohabitation, abortion, and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, my main concern was also for the children. It's the children who it's hurting the most. I mean, the adults are just selfish, in my opinion, in their own pursuits, and just the impact of the, like you said, the instability and not being able to have both mother and father, because they do have a mother and a father.
Yeah, the two things that really stood out to me was the wed lease. I couldn't believe the proposal for that and comparing it to like an apartment lease and how you live. And if people just don't want to renew it, then that's okay. And at the end of the chapter, when it talked about the misuse of technology for how children could potentially in the future be brought into the world by, I mean, when it talked about like how, I'm trying to find the wording here, can use reproductive technologies to where like it talked about like with the sperm and the eggs where they could make it like, you know, for each person to carry. I just thought that was just crazy, the way that they've just kind of taken the whole, you know, form of marriage and man and woman creating a family and just artificially making one now, and what that's going to do to, you know, children that are born under those circumstances.
It's so funny because when I was reading that part, I was thinking about Jurassic Park and how they like create the baby dinosaurs with like their technology and stuff. And I'm like, this is not normal. You can't play God with these things. And it's just gonna be a disaster, just like in Jurassic Park. And if you're one of those, no, just kidding. But yeah, that's what I was thinking about. And it's funny just how people think that they can actually do that and create new life that way, and not in the way that it's supposed to be and has always been. And it's kind of scary.
Yeah, I have a friend who, her and her partner have both carried a child that way, just from a donor sperm. They each did their own eggs, and I think bottom line is, I think that the child's going to wonder, well, where did that other half of me come from? Regardless if they do it anonymously, I mean, that sperm came from somewhere. Or the egg.
Another thing that I found a little disconcerting was the change in religious freedoms, because certain things are going to become normal, as far as, you know, same-sex marriage, and even further into, like he was talking about, like almost polygamous situations where there were, you know, 2 men and a woman, or 2 women and a man, or whatever the situation is, and how, because if laws change that way, that could affect, you know, religions, what the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church or the, you know, whatever church it is has to perform certain ceremonies. That our church has already, I mean, we had to kind of take a step back on the whole adoption thing, because we had to make it legal for same-sex couples to adopt. And so I think that that's it can affect what goes on within a religion, and it's may not something that they believe in.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I was just one thing that stood out to me that I hadn't really thought about before was how it extends to grandparents and extended family. Part of my job is that I care for the elderly, and extended families are huge in generation, but with grandparents. And I just started to think about the fact that children won't be caring for grandparents, and just how that affects so many different parts of our generation, and how an important part of raising children is the fact that they have the extended family. Sometimes when marriages don't work out or whatever, they have aunts and uncles and grandparents to help care for them. And I guess I hadn't really thought about the implications for extended family relationships in redefining marriage. So that's something that stood out to me in the reading, is that we just don't always understand how the ripple effects not just our children immediately, but how it extends to other relationships that are so important to children. So I just thought I'd add that.
Anacleto, are you there? I think he's frozen again. I'm not sure if he can hear us. Okay. Maybe if you can hear me, Anacleto, maybe you should close out and then sign back in. Sometimes that helps. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next question here. Do you think the general public understands these consequences or simply writes them off as a conspiracy theory with no founding. I personally think the general public does write a lot of these off, or they at least don't really take into consideration um, the effects of it. I mean, when we study it, we look at it. We look. Marriage has been here before government. It's kind of always been. It's just been within the last like 50, 60 years. With, I mean, we had before the no fault divorce. There was divorce, but it was not common, and then once that came about, it sparked all of this. So this, in the timeline of history, it's very new. It's in the baby stages, and it takes about 30 years to, a full generation to really kind of learn and grasp the effects of a decision. So we're just, learning within these last like 20 years all the effects. We're seeing the damages, the studies and statistics and reports are now coming in of what this has been doing. And I think because it's a slow transition, when we watched that other video, I think was it Kelly or Stephanie, the lady that spoke at BYU Idaho, when she made up that point that they open the door and they inch things in little by little. It's, we see that happening with all of these laws or things that people want changed. It's little by little. One thing gets passed and that opens the door or the way for another person to argue, well, hey, I want this and that's not fair. And it's just like a ripple effect. And once you let one in, it starts to flood in. So I don't think the public fully understands. I think they get so caught up with what's being promoted. And that's another issue too, is that what's being, reported back. That was a huge thing that Kelly talked about with the UN, is that the full facts aren't being brought back to the public's knowledge. So then we're forced to make decisions off of not the whole story. And then that just creates problems too. So I could go on and on, but I'll let you guys share. But yeah, I don't think that they fully understand what's going on and the choices that they're making at times.
Can you hear me now? Oh, good. So sorry, I got disconnected. I tried to make a comment on Lacey for her first intervention when she was talking about wed lease. So while I was reading that, and there was a question that came up on my mind, because I found it as kind of like insane and unrealistic, the proposal. Because what if you just renew, for example, this is a scenario. What if you just renew a 5 years contract, and the relationship began to deteriorate? Do you have to wait for the end of the contract, which in this case would be another 4 years? So what's gonna happen between the period of time? Do you call a separation, or how are you doing it? It's a lot of questions that you can raise it, or that can be raised when it comes to wed lease. To me personally, I think it's insane. To answer the first question, because I didn't have opportunity to. So I would like to mention some aspects that I believe are the most disconcerting. And one been in place already, which is the introduction of no-fault divorce. I think this is a major issue nowadays in a marriage, because people get divorced for no reason, most of the times. It could be solved, the marriage could be solved, but because it's been facilitated, people just jump in it, and in the text, Ryan Anderson said that, quote, no fault divorce help change the perception of marriage from permanent institution designed for the needs of children to a temporary one designed for the desire of adults, end of quote. So pretty much, what he's trying to say here is that the real consequence is the well-being of children. When we know now drastic divorce can affect the children's social, emotional, and psychological. So The other thing I want to mention is the weakening marital norms. Also it says on the text that um, now that the law has changed to teach that marriage is whatever consensual relationship, you find most emotional fulfilling. People will start to believe it, and then they will start to live accordingly. So this is exactly what's happened in our society today, unfortunately. You know, you're not. It's kind of like a temporary thing. If you're not satisfied, anymore, you just leave. You know. Um, the other one, I think there was also you guys mentioned it earlier was about the yes, someone mentioned also earlier. It's about some of proposals they made, the Tropel and the Quartets, you know, and I believe, not in any time soon, but I'll be surprised if in the years they try talking more about these issues, um, because the institution of marriage, unfortunately, is getting worse because there's less people that advocate the traditional marriage, and there's more people emphasizing trying to redefine marriage. Yeah, you can continue now.
Yeah, I'll just share some thoughts and then I have to leave. I'm so sorry. Um, I think the general public probably doesn't know. Just like I was comparing, I thought when we read that stuff about the UN and how when I was first reading it, I thought, wow, look at how they're protecting the children and things like that. And then I realized, oh, there's little bits that are really bad. And I think that the general public looks at the things and like, yes, we need to have rights and look at these people's relationships and things like that. But what they're not finding is the little itty bitty ways. And I think that's so how sin works. You just get a little bit in there, but like you said, there's gonna be consequences that come down the road, and I just don't think they're aware of it. But I do think that there probably is a small minority of the public who are very calculating in how they are pushing their own agenda forward. And they, I think, are aware and that they've totally accepted it and they're happy about it. But I think the general public might be going along and being accepted and then kind of find out, hey, this wasn't the greatest thing, but I don't know. I'm so sorry that I have to run, but I'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks, Jody.
Yeah.
One thing I'll throw in there. If you guys have not read the book Stand for the Family by Sharon Slater, it is an eye-opener. I highly recommend you guys read it. It is crazy, the type of stuff that goes on that gets talked about at the UN, the things that try to get pushed. I share it with everybody that I think you should read the book. If you've got time, it's a good read. You're not going to want to put it down because it's a page turner with
what is the title again?
It's Stand for the Family by Sharon Slater. It's a real eye-opener. I read that a couple semesters back for a project that I picked to do off a list, and it's really an eye-opener.
Yeah, that's good. Talking
About the book also, I don't know if you guys read the Marriage Go Around. It's a pretty good one about the stage of the marriage and the family in Americas today. This one? I had opportunity to do this reading from the Family 300, I believe, 2 semesters ago.
And who's the author?
Say it again.
The author
is Andrew Andrew J. Cherlin.
I can't see the author. You gotta push it up more.
You can see the author on the bottom right here.
Oh, Cherlin. Okay, cool. I'll check it out. Thanks.
One of the things that I think about the general public on understanding consequences has a lot, in my opinion, to do with disconcerting everything that's like religious or yeah, probably your own beliefs or your own opinion, because now it's gotten to a point that you can't even mention anything from the Bible or anything from God without being like bigot or treated as if you're like old school, or that's not modern, you're not in the right mindset and stuff. And people are just, like you guys said, Satan is going in little by little, and this is one of his biggest assets that he has now, is that he can get people to think that anything that has to do with religious, that is not modern and that is not in the way that the world is going in, and so you're an outsider basically. And when people don't think about those consequences, they don't like realize, I think it was for another class that I was reading this too, like the family is not just important for Heavenly Father's plan. The family is important for economy in the country. It's important for a government. It's important for taxes. It's important for everything. And it's just having an impact on every single aspect of our lives, even though we don't want to realize it. And yeah, I think it's just important to try to get these statistics and numbers out there so that people actually know what it's bringing upon us. And it's not just because we're anti-gay, it's because we're pro everybody living fairly. And that's something that a lot of people don't really want to understand from us. So.
I agree, Clarissa. I don't know if you guys watched that extra little under the optional video. It was like the 6-minute video with Ryan Anderson when he was talking at the thing with the gay gentleman who was trying to, define, marriage. They were having that conversation, and yeah, it was really interesting to see that. Yeah, most people don't. I get that they're fighting for, certain rights. Like he was like, I should be able to claim on my taxes or not be taxed, but Ryan was like, that's not what marriage is. That's where the line gets drawn.
Yes.
I
He was
love
talking
the
about
way he
discrimination.
talked, the way he used his words. He's like, it sounds like what you want is not what a marriage is. And I loved how he so delicately defined that what that gentleman was seeking was not that. And when the gentleman responded that he was being discriminated against, when Ryan responded and said that it's not that you're being discriminated against, everybody has an equal opportunity to choose a marriage, to enter into a union of a marriage. You're just choosing not to enter into that. I just loved it. And so with what Clarissa was saying, we're going to have to present the statistics and the facts. That's the only way we're going to be able to truly stand up for ourselves and against the attacks that are going to come against us in the future. Is we're going to have to be like Elder Bednar. I love when he talks. He brings the facts. He brings the statistics. And you can't argue against that. So it's very important to be aware of what's going on and what the studies are showing.
I agree with that. I think that, I don't think that we know that they're aware of these consequences, and I think they feel they have a very valid argument, like Clarissa was saying, that they can claim that we're bigots, that we are anti this, anti that. And what we are, I love that you put it that way, we are pro, that everybody has a good life. Everybody gets a fair shot, not a fair shot, but gets a shot at, having parents and being given the chance to grow up correctly. And that's really what we're promoting. But I think that they do a great job of putting that spin on it, that we're anti this and we're homophobic and we're, all these things. But, and I think that gives them, more evidence for them to say that this is a conspiracy theory, or there's no evidence to support what you are trying to do. And so I just think that, it is important that that's why it's important for our with our majors, with our degrees, that we do keep fighting for them and we don't just let it sit, because we need to get those facts, and people need to gather them and show, look, these are the studies, this is what's going on out there, so that we can keep fighting for them and they can see the evidence of the detriment that it really is.
You know, I was just going to add really quick, it was an eye-opener for me that I need to be educated, because when I started this week's readings and was reading on, you know, the United Nations and their stand, I was thinking, well, yeah, why hasn't the U.S. joined? But the more informed I became, the more I realized I do need to understand the issues, and I may not be as educated as I need to be. And it's so important that we, just as you guys were saying, we need to have the facts and be armed with those facts when we're presenting our case, because I'm not educated in so many of these things, and that is a responsibility that we have. And the other thing, point that I thought about was people that are really fighting against the family, they are pushing to have what is taught in our schools dictated by philosophies. And so many teachers that I have worked with have real issues about what they have to teach and what they can't teach. And so it goes back on the children too. What are they being educated about? And it's just, we have to be so proactive and so educated to be able to present our case. And it was an eye-opener this week to me that I have a lot of work to do. I may fall in that category of not being educated. So something I thought about.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, because I feel like one of the biggest problems right now is that this is such a selfish era. Like, I feel like that's the main problem with all of this, is that gay people want their rights. They don't care about children. They only want to consent to what they want sexually, and I don't know what else, but they just want to satisfy their needs, and they don't really care about the outcomes of it. They just want to be like, I'm gay, and if you don't accept it, then you're a bigot and you're homophobe and this and that. So I think we need to fight that selfishness first, and just kind of still show that love that we're supposed to be showing to everybody, no matter who they are. But it's kind of a hard fight when you involve that selfishness and the fight for the family, because then where do you start? Where do I go? And things. So that's kind of like the question that I have, is how do you begin this struggle for fight? Kind of. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it always gets me when people say like, oh, you know, there's too many rules, or there's too many laws, or it's too constraining, and like, you know, we need to let this happen. And essentially, they're, you know, with the mind frame, like, you know, we need to run free. Like, that's, you know, that's the problem because of all this restriction. And they just want more and more and more. There's no lines, there's no boundaries, there's no consequences. It's like letting a child like run free. I mean, you know, we don't do that. I mean, there's rules, there's boundaries, and when that doesn't happen, things get chaotic. And so I'm just wondering, like, you know, it's only going to get worse. And I just wonder in the future what people are going to try to push to just remove everything, and what's going to happen. Like, what's it going to take, if anything, for people to really realize, like, we screwed up. We thought that, like, you know, taking away things would provide more, but I don't know. I'm waiting for people to hopefully have the light bulb turn on that structure is a good thing, and that we need more of that, and not just let's loosen up all the laws and definitions of things and run free, because that's going to bring, you know, true quote unquote happiness.
Yes. So, Clarissa, like you made, I mean, Lacey, you talk about optional video from, you know. So I want to comment about it because I also found interesting. But I think, you know, he's not the guy, the gay guy. He was looking for his own interest. But the point is that if everybody start thinking like that, what's gonna happen? It's gonna be like a consistent marriage redefined. Because now they want to for like same-sex marriage too. Like so, the same-sex marriage now and tomorrow or in 10 years they have to redefine again, like Ryan Anderson said, because he asked the guy, what about the trumpets and the quartets? For that, because tomorrow, the people, those individuals that are in the trumpet relationship and the quartets, they want to get married also. So what's going to happen? They're going to redefine marriage once again. So he was pretty much like, blunt on this question. He said, this is what's happened. This is what has to do. Marriage is between man and woman. All right. If you don't want, like you mentioned, if you don't want to, being a spark, what you're looking for is not marriage. I think he was very clear on that. So, and I really like the way he answered the question. So, he said, I really like what he said also. And I believe that Andrew response to that question was very well. I said that we should reject such, revisionism and work to restore the essential that make marriage so important for society welfare, sexual complementary, monogamy, exclusivity, and permanency. So he was pretty clear on that. We're not gonna be surprised because people is gonna push it. So we have to be strong, and we have to maintain our ideology. So, and to advocate for family and children, and also bring gospel perspective. You mentioned that it's very difficult sometimes to bring the gospel perspective when you talk to these issues, but when you do it, when you have a secular, source or resource and gospel resource, we have more, would be better. Yeah.
Very true. Okay, so I'm going to look at the next question. Clarissa kind of talked about it a little bit, and I kind of touched on it too. It said with the statement, so you're on the wrong side of history, and how do you respond? Or how would you respond? I think the biggest point we talked about was kind of just making sure you bring the statistics and the facts. But if anybody else wants to comment, anything else that hasn't been talked about on this, I'll go ahead and leave it open right now for you to respond.
But I'll ask them why they think they are in the right side of the history. I want to hear that explanation, the question. So to see what they think, to understand their point of view, and then by the answer, I can answer the question. So, because I don't believe we are in the wrong side of history, So, because the history is a history, and the marriage is being set for years as institution. People trying to redefine, they have the right to. It's the right thing to do.
I like that a lot. Just asking them what their perspective is, because sometimes I know that when I get asked something, I kind of freeze, and I'm like, I don't really have the answer for that. And just trying to understand both sides of the problem kind of helps you to stand firmer on your ground and explain the things, because people, like I said, like super selfish, like that includes me too. Sometimes I get really selfish, but I feel like people just feel like they're so entitled to their own opinion that whatever you say is wrong. And when we explain it that way, that we're not trying to change their opinion, we're just trying to live our lives the way that we want to. I think that everybody kind of has to respect their own common ground. And that's something that people need to understand too. And that's something that we need to advocate to as well. Like, if you don't believe in what we do, then that's okay. But let us live the way that we do, and we'll let you live the way that you do. Kind of a thing.
I think that the one that I was thinking about was my marriage doesn't affect you. I think we've talked thoroughly how it does affect us. I mean, it maybe not be like a personal, in a very personal way, like affect my day-to-day living, but it does affect, the way, the children that my children will interact with. It will affect the adults that I interact with. It'll affect the people, around me and what they think is right and wrong. And, generally, I remember as a kid, the people that I hung out with generally had the same views, even if they weren't the same religion. We generally spent time with people that had a lot of the same opinions, or didn't try to force their opinions on us or anything, I guess. But I feel like that's changing drastically, because when you walk into a home, or when your kids come home and they say, I want to go hang out with my friend Susie Q, and she has 2 moms, you have to start explaining that to them, and teaching them that they can't go up to them and say, that's wrong, or whatever. But it does affect their day-to-day living. It will affect their friends and who they're spending time with. And so it's not just about letting 2 people that are in love getting married anymore. It's about an entire society, and how that is going to be altered if, laws change and stuff.
That's a great response, and that was the last question that was on this list of my marriage doesn't affect you. How do you respond? I agree with everything that you said, Finley. It's like with the ecosystems we read about this week. Everything affects everything. It's not just 2 people's decisions and that's it. It affects many people, and it affects all the systems, everything that you come into direct contact with, and even indirect contact with. I mean, family, friends, church, daycares, work, government. It's everything. And so it either trickles down or trickles up. It's a 2-way street. And when I was doing a lot of my pondering and answering of questions this week about which system do you think is the one that you can advocate the best in, or which one's difficult for you, or which one do you think is more influential, I really think that it starts with us. I think the microsystems are so important because it's what we are in direct contact with, the micro and the meso, and it's what we deal with normally on a daily basis. But the macro systems are huge. It's what the mass public gets exposed to. It's what gets brought into individual societies, and how it trickles down. And so with the way that marriage is going, or what people want, it does. It affects everybody. And I think people need to be, on both sides, need to be more educated into what actually happens with any type of marriage. I mean, we could even use our marriage as an example and not just always point it onto them. But yeah, there definitely needs to be more education as to what actually happens. And people, again, I feel need to know that, because I feel that a lot of decisions are being made based off of not all the facts.
So,
Yeah.
That's
absolutely true.
yes.
You wanna go? You can
Go
go ahead.
ahead if you want.
No, it's okay. You go ahead.
So,
I believe that they look for them to want to get the permission to get married, because why? Because they love each other, right? It's because they love each other. So I found a quote from Elder Todd Christopherson, which pretty much answers this type of questions. He says that marriage is more than your love for each other. In your love, you see only your two selves in the world. But in marriage, you are a link in the chain of generations, which God causes to come to and pass away to his glory and calls into his kingdom. In your love, you see only the heaven of your own happiness. But in marriage, you are placed at a post of responsibility towards the world of and mankind. Your love is your own private possession, but marriage is more than something personal. It is a status, an office, just as it is the crown and not merely will to the room that make the king. So it's marriage and not merely your love for each other that joins you together in the sight of God and man. So love comes from you, but marriage from above, from God. So marriage is both a natural institution, and also is a sacred union because it's a root plan of creation. So this is what a lot of people don't understand. They just think marriage is about love. It's not just about love.
That's
Good
really
point.
good. Actually, my husband and I, because I was so shocked when I was reading this chapter, that I was like, I have to tell Nick about it. And we kind of had a discussion last night before bed, and I was telling him about like the thruples and the quartets and this and that. And I was like, this is so scary. Like what Finley was saying, what kind of world are my kids gonna live in? I have to be that much stronger to teach my children what is right and even what is not right from a very early age so that they can discern for themselves what they want to do with their lives. And I hope that I can be that good of a mom that I can instill the goodness of them, the gospel and stuff. But also what Anakita was saying just now about love being from, marriage being from God and stuff, like that just surprised me so much from the reading too, that they were even calling marriage this inhumane thing because monogamy is so hard to do and because having an open relationship is the way to do it because that's how you can satisfy all of your needs and stuff. But that is such a natural man thing to say. Like that is not from God. And it's just amazing to me how much perspectives on it has changed. And even just talking to my husband about it, he doesn't know anything about it and I didn't know anything about it either, but it's just fun to kind of get new perspectives on it and try to come up with different solutions for our future family, because also how Lacey was saying, the microsystem is like your direct thing to influence. I think that that's what I would want to focus on the most with my children, and then hopefully instill that trust in them that they can with questions about like, Mom, why does my friend have two moms, or why do they have two dads? And I can hopefully explain things in a very good way that they know that it's not right, but that they can also still show love towards other people and stuff. So
Okay, so I'm just going to leave it open for anybody to make any last comments on anything that stood out, anything else that stood out to them in the readings or videos this week, or anything else that they thought about after somebody mentioned something that they want to share before we summarize.
I was just going to add, when we were talking about the different, the microsystem and the macro systems, I'm a mom of teenage children and young adults, and I really think that when we advocate for families, it's got to start within our own families, because they're going to be are going to be fighting for the family a few years down the road, and they really need to understand. And I live in a very LDS society and culture here, but my children have come home and just said, Mom, you know, I'm not sure what I believe. This is what I'm facing at school. This is what my friends and their families are struggling with. And so it's not easy. We need to be well informed and prepared to teach our children who are going to be teaching their children. And then we can branch out. And, you know, I don't think that takes away from our responsibility in our communities and so forth. But I've just been really surprised at the questions that we have within our own family. And it's gotten to the point where every single one of us is facing this with family members or whatever. So I think the foundation of our advocacy, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be within our own family and make sure that they're going to be able to continue to advocate for families down the road, because it's only going to get worse. So thoughts that I had on the different systems and where we need to start.
Okay. If nobody else has anything that they want to share, I will turn it over to Finley. She's going to summarize the end of our meeting here.
All right, so in the beginning, we talked about how there were some of the consequences would be more abortion, and children will have less stability within their families. Religious places will be affected by some of these laws and forced to either do away with some of their policies or forced to kind of do things that they don't believe in. We talked about wed lease and how no-fault divorce has become a big problem with all this instability with marriage and children, and how it has made marriage something that's not permanent anymore. It's something that's just, oh, I'll do it if I feel like it, I'll end it if I feel like it, type of thing. And then some of the things, understanding the consequences. If the public understands the consequences, we said that we don't think they do. We're just now seeing the effects of some of the marriage laws that have come into effect in the past couple years, and we are still waiting to see the full effect of those. And so they don't really understand the consequences that it really is having on our society. We talked about how we need to use our education to help promote advocacy and help, find those studies and things. And a lot of the decisions are being made because a lot of the decisions are being made selfishly and not in a way that is looking out for the benefit of all. We talked about the wrong side of history. Anacleto said that he would respond with a question, and we agreed that was a good idea to just respond with that same question. Why do they think that we're on the wrong side? And then we talked about how their marriage affects us, because it's who we will spend our time with. It's who our children are going to spend their time with. Our kids are going to come home with questions, and we need to be educated enough to answer those questions and teach them about the gospel and the foundation of the family and marriage, but then also teach them that we still love those people and that we're kind to them. So there's no confusion or hate that develops or whatever it is. And that was it.
Awesome. Thank you, Finley.
Cool.
So, Finley, do you want to stop recording, and then we can go over a couple things for next week's meeting?
Yeah, I'll turn it off right now.